Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Tonight we're going to look at Face, a comic book written by Peter Milligan and beautifully drawn by Duncan Fegredo. Also beautifully colored by Sherilyn Van Valkenburg. I don't often comment on the colorists in comics, but this is some stunning stuff, especially considering the time. In the 2000s, coloring got better in comics. The paper got better. There's lots of really great colors out there. But I gotta say, I forgot how great she was. This is some just beautiful coloring and beautiful art as well. Let's start off with this cover alone. I'm pretty sure this is just Duncan Fegredo, a painting. But this kind of modern art looking crazy cover, really just as a piece of graphic design with the way the logo is, Face. This is just a really nice cover. This was part of the DC Vertigo Voices sub-imprint of Vertigo. Vertigo Voices was attempting to let artists and writers tell less genre-based stories. Because, this came out in 95. Vertigo was still pretty much known for fantasy. Sandman, Doom Patrol, Animal Man. Stuff that was, lots of supernatural stuff going on. Hellblazer 2 was around then, Swamp Thing. And so these were just little one-shots where artists and writers could tell stories that didn't have a lot of, supernatural shenanigans going on. Eventually Vertigo, a lot of their line became stuff like this. But this was kind of interesting at the time. We have a kind of fancy-looking credits page with early computer graphics technology involved. And we start off the story with our protagonist, David. He's a plastic surgeon, and what a way to start off the comic. He's performing plastic surgery on himself, just very gory. But we find out that it's a little daydream he has. I guess it's something he thinks about all the time. He's about to go into surgery. We realize from all the captions are his interior monologue. He's the narrator. Also, from his dialogue here, and in this next scene where he has lunch with his wife and his father, he's kind of like a very vain, narcissistic kind of person. He's not like this monster or anything. He's just, he's got issues. His father is constantly kind of mildly berating him for being a plastic surgeon. He's like, you're so talented. You could be, be a real doctor, It's kind of interesting the way he looks at the world. When he looks at people's faces, all he can see is their, imperfections, and he uses the clinical terminology. His wife is a writer, and they seem pretty happy at first. They're both very attractive young people who are successful. So one day, this guy named Gilbert Allen comes to his office and says, I represent a very secretive client, and he wants to use your services. Turns out that it's world-renowned artist Andrew Sphinx, who's considered one of the best painters of all time. He's up there with Picasso in this reality. And he basically says, you and your wife will come live on his private island for 6 months while the surgery progresses. And, of course, you'll be paid an obscene amount of money. He goes home to his wife. He's got to convince her to go. She has a career. But he says, you've been wanting to write that novel, and you're always bitching about your job. Maybe this is the perfect opportunity. Just wanted to mention, guys, look at these colors by Valkenburg. Really great stuff. And I haven't even mentioned the art, but hopefully you've noticed it yourself. And this is interesting. It's a very loose Duncan Fegredo style. He's really just sketching stuff out. But even then, in 95, he was such a great artist that, he knows really well how to draw. So when he does, is sketchy, it's still beautiful looking. I mean, just everything, gestures, facial expressions. He's really good, but it's very loose. I mean, a lot of backgrounds are just kind of quick and sketchy. We'll see throughout the comic. There's some really sketchy stuff going on here. Not sketchy like Suspect. I mean, kind of loose art. We see in this interlude, though, too, that David is really just very full of himself. I guess, you know, he loves his wife in his way, but he also is pretty much, it's all about him. Like, he convinces her to go, they have this nice kiss, and he just pulls away and just is like, well, better call my boss and let him know I accepted the job. So this is an interesting character quirk of David. He's in a bookstore. He's looking up Andrew Sphinx art books. He wants to kind of research them. Beautiful woman is there. He kind of flirts with her, and he gets her phone number. And as she waves goodbye, he says, I won't call her, of course, but that's not the point. We'll find out later what that's all about. So he's home with his wife. They're looking at these Andrew Sphinx art books. I guess the last photo of him was taken in like 1975 at Picasso's funeral. They were kind of rivals and friends. She seems to be getting into Andrew Sphinx's art. So now we see them on this island. It's peppered with all these weird sculptures that Andrew Sphinx has made over the years, over the decades. Here's what I'm talking about. Look how loose this is. But it's all just beautiful. It's great. He has all these great works of art. And Fegredo very sketchily kind of duplicates of Picasso there. And some other, great paintings. Rebecca, his wife, seems quite in awe of this. And she's pretty much just like, whoa, this is pretty awesome. So 2 days in, they still haven't seen Andrew Sphinx. All they see is this guy, Gilbert. Gilbert's starting to rub them the wrong way. So I guess there's a whole surgical surgical theater on the island, of course. And finally, David gets to meet Andrew Sphinx. He just pops up and just starts chatting with him. So they're having dinner together. Andrew's dressed up like some harlequin or something. And they basically discuss the whole reason why he wants plastic surgery. He basically hasn't seriously painted since his wife died, which is about, I think, around that time that last photo was taken, for decades. And he wants to get back to be a serious artist. And he, for some reason in his weird mind, he thinks, well, I need a new face. I have to reinvent myself before because I want to be a new kind of artist. I want to be more postmodern than I was. He was known for his portraiture. David's getting a little too drunk on the vino. And it seems like Rebecca's very charmed by Andrew Sphinx. We also realize that you can't necessarily trust David as a narrator. He says, this fucking Andrew Sphinx seems like a real asshole. But we can read his dialogue, and he actually seems like a very interesting, eccentric, but a very charming and interesting dude. So he tells David also that, plastic surgery, you're the new artists. I mean, you're actually, your subject is your object. These people, instead of doing someone's portrait, painting their portrait, you're actually working on them. They're the canvas. We also find out that he knows a little too much about them than he should. He seems to know all these personal things about Rebecca. And he says, I've done research into you guys. I wouldn't invite you into my home if I didn't. some of the beautiful Valkenburg coloring here. So David is kind of pretty annoyed. He gives them a tour of his place, shows them his nude gallery, just all his nudes. And David's a little kind of buzzed. He's a little drunk. And he starts, it's almost like Andrew is kind of flirting with Rebecca. He's like, "Oh, I would like to paint you someday." And she's kind of she's really flattered. I mean, because remember, in this world, he is like, Picasso. Picasso was still alive. And he says something like, I'm a pathologically tactile person. I want to touch something before I paint it. And he grabs her breast. And now we cut away. And we see, I guess David punched him. And this is him afterwards. So we're jumping through time, thinking, kind of regretting what he did, but not really. Rebecca's mortified. Now we flash back. And she's like, "What the hell did you just do?" He's like, "He was touching your breast." "What'd you expect me to do?" Andrew's very gracious about the whole thing. He's just like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe I'm just a foolish old man who's lost all sense of social decorum. I apologize profusely." So he doesn't fire him or anything. Rebecca comes out while he's on the dock and kind of annoyed with him. But she also says, "Yeah, I shouldn't have let him touch me." Because David's a little drunk, he kind of says some snarky things and pisses her off. But then all of a sudden they look over and they see what they think is Andrew's ex-wife dancing in the woods, Hortense. They know what she looks like because Hortense was Andrew's muse. So a lot of his paintings were of Hortense. And they're running through the gardens, and we see all these weird sculptures. And it turns out it's just a statue. That's what they see, and they basically say, it must have been a trick of the light. Maybe because I'm a little drunk, I saw something. And then Andrew pops out of nowhere. And he says, that couldn't... Hortense died 20 years ago. And once again, David says something stupid and pisses off Rebecca. So we're realizing their relationship isn't that great. The next morning, the surgery starts. He does his evaluation, makes all these magic marker things on his face, telling him what he's going to have to do. And Andrew, it's kind of interesting here. They kind of get in this discussion about aesthetics. It's like, what makes beauty? Why are some people beautiful? You can't really put it into like a mathematical equation. There's some things you can, but a lot of it's just like, you don't know why. Andrew shows David the death mask of Hortense. And David's just like, wow, just a perfect face. But why? So they continue this discussion about beauty and aesthetics. Turns out that she died at the operating table. She was undergoing plastic surgery. And it didn't go well. He actually manipulated the death mask to retain her youthful beauty. So it's not a true death mask. So now we see David in the bathroom, and he's looking at pictures of Hortense. And he's in there for a little while. So he makes a pantomime of like doing the toilet paper off the roll and flushing it down the toilet. So in case Rebecca's listening, she'll think, the reason why he's in there, he's taking a dump. And apparently it's something he's done many times before. We find out either here or later. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll wait till it's revealed. But apparently this is something that happens a lot, that he's in the bathroom doing something, that a wife would wonder about. So now he's walking through the mansion, and he wants to take another look at Hortense's death mask. When he opens it up, it's actually like a horrible, desiccated, her actual face. You can see the fascia and the muscles and everything. It's disgusting. Flies coming out. He runs screaming. It seems almost hallucinatory, and he's starting to suspect that maybe Andrew Sphinx is like his wine is spiked or something, or maybe the food, because the whole time he's felt a little off kilter, even when he hasn't drunken too much. So he sees Gilbert, the butler, and he says, the death mask, it was horrible. He says, oh, are you sure? Let's go back and look at it. Of course, it's just the death mask. And Gilbert mentions to David that he wasn't a fan of Hortense. She was just incredibly beautiful. She didn't have a great intellect or wit. Just was perfectly gorgeous. And it was a bad influence on Andrew, he thinks. So now we see the operating theater here, and he's had a change. Andrew's had a change of heart. He says, talking about the aesthetics of beauty, David basically thinks, just a face should look like how people like faces to look. And he says, yeah, but that's just like, old time art. I want to be more postmodern, almost abstract, just like that happened to the arts. Nobody in a gallery is going to pay $1 million for just a beautifully painted face. It's modern art kind of changed all that. Kind of got rid of classical realism as the ideal. So he says, I don't want you to make my face, do all the typical things to make me beautiful and young. I want you to make me look like this. And this is a Picasso portrait of Andrew when he was younger. And Dave was just like, this guy's fucking crazy. But he actually wants to look like a Cubist painting, which in real life would be horrific. He tells Rebecca. Rebecca's like, oh, that's monstrous. And she's like, well, I guess we're leaving, right? But of course, David's, not that, his ethical barometer is a little skewed. So he's like, well, this could make my career. And he admits to Rebecca that he's made some mistakes at work. And if he doesn't do this job, he's going to be fired. He's not the wonder kid that he kind of made himself out to be the first half of this comic. So I guess he gets to work and he's going to do this. It almost seems like he tells him that you can't have an aesthetic as long as possible. We're not going to use that aesthetic because it disrupts the face's natural expression. But I think he's kind of relishing. You get the sense that he loves the fact that he's causing Andrew pain. So now, after it's 6 weeks later, they've had many operations. This thing's going to take like 20 operations or something. So we realize that the rift between Rebecca and David's pretty deep now. She says, I have to go. And he says, yeah, but I got to stay here. I got to finish up. She's like, fine, I'm leaving on the next boat. And, don't rush home on my account. I won't be there. So she's basically breaking up with him. She's just like, I don't want to live like this. God, these deep colors here are so nice. And then, I just want to mention, look at this, how sketchy these trees are in the grass. But it just looks great. So then they see Hortense dancing again, and when they run out there, it's Gilbert. So we find out, David knows who Gilbert was. Gilbert was a promising artist in the 50s who became obsessed with Sphinx. He followed him around like a puppy dog, doing anything for him. And so now this is what he's been reduced to for the past, 40 years. Just being his, kind of slave. I guess he would make Gilbert do this because he missed Hortense. And I guess he kind of grew to like it or realize there was something in his sexuality that he didn't realize. And just very odd scene. So now I guess the operations are done. And Andrew's got his all his bandages on, but they're gonna have a dinner, and this will be the unveiling of his face. Rebecca's still there because I think she has to wait a few days for her boat to come. And definitely Rebecca's not charmed by Andrew anymore. It seems like David and Rebecca are feeling a little off. So David's theory about maybe he's spiking the food in the wine is he's still thinking about that. So now we find out that Andrew knows even more stuff about them. He reveals some personal stuff about their lives, this time very sensitive information. We find out that David hasn't been having sex with Rebecca. The reason why he gets those phone numbers from beautiful women is he likes to just masturbate thinking about calling them and what he'd do with them. It's kind of weird. And not having sex with his own wife. That's why he was so worried about the bathroom when he was looking at the art books. Because, he's always jerking off in the bathroom, and she kind of knows what's going on. We also find out that Rebecca, before she met David, she slept with his cousin, Sammy. And somehow he knows this. Turns out that he actually, he's so rich and powerful. His reputation is so amazing that he said, you'll be amazed how loquacious a therapist bound by the Hippocratic Oath can be when offered an original Sphinx painting worth $2 million. So he basically bribed their therapists and has all this information on them that nobody knows. So this causes a rift between Rebecca and David. They start yelling at each other. And finally, though, she realizes who the real enemy is, and she's like, David, if you don't come with me tomorrow on that boat, you're sick for staying here. And David's fed up with him, too. But he still takes off his bandages. And we see his handiwork. And that's what he looks like. So he kind of does look like a cubist version of himself. His ear is lopsided. Obviously, the eyes are the nose is where it shouldn't be. And Andrew seems pleased with it. Now, later on, we see David's dreaming. I really love this dream sequence, the way it's just really beautiful. And once again, the colors really add to it. And he's having this dream where he's looking in the mirror and Picasso jumps out of the mirror and he actually gives him very good advice. He says, take your wife away from here. Don't worry about who she slept with. Life is too short for that crap. Make love to each other. Be nice to each other. And then he adds, maybe take some Spanish night classes. Learn how to speak Spanish. I guess that's the dream part of it. There's always a dada weird things in dreams. So he wakes up and he says, I can't even remember coming to bed. So I think he would, he's pretty sure now that he's been being drugged. He sees Rebecca, and when Rebecca turns over, she's got a death mask on her, and it's epoxy to her face. He can't pull it off. Andrew comes into the room, and he says, yeah, this is like a super, polymer glue. And if you try to take it off her face, of course, it's going to rip her skin off, her whole face off. So David says, I'll kill you. And Andrew pulls a gun out. So now Andrew's not just the weird old eccentric now. This is getting scary. So he basically says, surgery is the only way that's going to save your wife. You're going to have to do the best work you've ever done. Love this page right here. Just the coloring, that statue. You can see why Mignola picked Fegredo to draw all those Hellboy stories. It's a perfect fit. So he's going to hopefully get this death mask off his wife's face. And it's a lot harder than he thought. Andrew's just watching the whole time with a gun on him. And then David, his narration here, he says, have I ever told you how much I love Rebecca? Have I ever told you how scared I am of losing her? Because, it's like he's talking to us. All the narration's been like that. And then we see him outside. And the statue of Hortense, he's got some kind of club or baseball bat in his hand. And he starts bashing in the face, that perfect face of hers. You can really see the magnolia there too. And Gilbert comes out. And he's trying to basically he says, we realize, he says, David, don't blame yourself. The blood, the trauma, the strain in the heart. So Rebecca's dead. That's why he's so infuriated. He punches Gilbert. And he's like kicking him. And he says, you've colluded with him this whole time. For all I know, you're the one who put the death mask on my wife that led to her death. And Gilbert says, I never thought it would go this far. I can't betray him, but yeah, I'm not happy with this stuff. So he says, for the first time, you're going to stand up to that monster, Gilbert. You're going to help me. And Gilbert actually says, yes, you're right, I will. So they're having dinner. Andrew's got the gun all ready in case David tries anything. And David does get up and he's got a scalpel in his hand. And Andrew is going to shoot him. But then Gilbert, after all these years, he swats the gun out of his hand. And David slashes Andrew's throat. And Gilbert says, starts talking about more art stuff. He says, you made a good point there, David. The point about performance, that the artist should be the surgeon as well as the canvas. And David says, what are you talking about? And before he realizes, Gilbert conks him out with the gun butt. He wakes up and he's in the surgical theater. His face has been taken off his musculature. He's still conscious though. He has this amazing cocktail of Novocaine and cocaine, so he can't really feel the pain. And Gilbert reveals himself that he's been Andrew Sphinx this whole time. The person who we thought was Andrew Sphinx, that was Gilbert. He decided, first when he wanted to reinvent himself, he figured, okay, I'll become Gilbert, he'll become me, so I'll become new. But it wasn't enough. This is a pretty horrifying way to die. He basically told Gilbert that he would be his greatest masterpiece. So it was his, of course, it was his idea to make who we thought was Andrew, Gilbert, get that like cubist face. And David's last thoughts are how, he's actually quite good at this. And he says, this is a dream, right? I mean, you would tell me if I wasn't. He says, have I ever told you? Yes, I think I probably have told you. And that's how it ends. And so look at this kind of horrifying way, the last thing he sees. So this is the mirror. So he's seeing himself in the mirror, and we see the blood coagulating, because he starts with the eyes. The blood coagulating around his eyes until he can see nothing, and the blood, well, not coagulates, I'm sorry, pooling around his eyes, and until he can't see anything. Pretty horrific ending. I was like, I haven't read this since 95, and I totally forgot what happened. And I was just like, oh, this is kind of creepy. And then those last few pages, I was like, oh, man, that's harsh. But it's kind of an interesting comic in the sense that it reminds me like of a movie script, which isn't necessarily a good thing, because this has a very uncomic book feel to it, and all the good things about a comic. It is kind of just like, it's not my favorite Milligan script. It's definitely not his worst. I just read that last night. It was very sad. A comic that I thought I loved, that I hadn't read since the 80s, that I bought and thought it, loved it then. A Screamer with a K. Rereading that last night and yesterday. I was going to do that, make a video for it. And I was just like, oh, this is not very good. I don't need to ever read this again. And it's not so great either. It's not bad, but it's actually quite good. But I was just like, this is terrible. I don't ever want to read this again. So I went to my shelf and got another Milligan comic. And I like this a lot more. But it's kind of un-Milligan-like in the sense that it's just a very kind of normally composed story. Like some good horror movie or something. Kind of reminded me of. But I got to say, it's what saves it, makes it a cut above that, is just the beautiful art and coloring in this. Just really a treat for the eyes. But I like the story. It's just maybe not zany enough for Peter Milligan to my for my liking. It's a little pedestrian, even though it's very odd. By a lot of people's standards, it's a very weird story. But overall, though, gotta say, it's definitely stayed in the collection. I liked rereading this a lot. Hope you guys liked looking at it, and I hope to see you next time here at the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.